Hi again, and thanks for joining me in today's special edition of Connected, where we're speaking with Sergey Kurso, Principal Solutions Architect, and Sergey Avramchuk, Senior Account Manager at Amazon AWS. I mean, what an interesting conversation to have with one of the key backbone service providers to the iGaming industry. We had a really good discussion. I think you're going to find it exciting. There's probably more that AWS does or can do for your business than you're already aware of. I know I was enlightened by this conversation. I think you will be too. Thank you for tuning in. Join me and enjoy this conversation with AWS. Hi, I'm Ashley Lang, and you've tuned into another special episode of the Connected Podcast. At Pragmatic Solutions, we work with a lot of integrated vendors to our platform, but underneath it all is who we host with and who powers our technology across the globe and that our key partners rely upon. We've had a long-standing relationship with Amazon Web Services, and I'm really excited to have a conversation today with Sergey from AWS, who joined us here in Gibraltar to talk about their division inside of AWS, the specialist division that they operate, focused on the iGaming industry inside of AWS, the services that AWS provides, some stories about the customers that you support and the success that you've helped them drive in their business. And what I'm really interested about as a starting point really is AWS is a massive organization. Amazon as a whole is a massive organization. How did it come about that you guys were involved in a foundation team of a whole iGaming division inside of AWS? I'd be really interested to know the initial story.
Yeah, thank you actually for having us here. So it's a real pleasure to share some experience. How it started, I mean, this is the culture of Amazon. That's what I would call. So basically, this is the first time ever I've seen that the culture impacts so much the processes inside the company. So whenever we take decision regards moving forward, promoting people, whatever else, so we are following our core principles, like we call them leadership principles, like customer obsession, deliver results, bias for action. And one of these things is that help this thing is bias for action and ownership. So basically that means that we need to act fast. Sometimes we don't know all the information, but we need to act fast. In a frugal way, that means do more with less. And we own what we do. So if we do something, we own it. And that's how we came with this idea. So when we started 6 years ago, we knew nothing about the industry. It was like when I approached the customer, it was the customer saying, "Sorry, you don't need to know about our business." It was like, and how can I support you? I mean, you're not telling me anything. But basically, the reason was that we didn't know the terms. We didn't know what is DGR, what MGA, what the licenses are, nothing at all. So we tried to support in a more general way, but no one wanted to talk to us because this is a closed in some way market. You need to earn trust.
Right.
And we started to learn. And then years, after we understood, okay, we need to know more, to learn everything. There's so many sources. And we built a team that it's worldwide team. We have almost in each part of the continent and who supports customers from different locations. And now it can be a small startup and you want to compete globally, or you're a well-established company and you want to launch new features, Gen AI features, whatever features you want. And we are able to talk on your language and support you from the technical side. So this is probably the key how it's happened.
It's interesting what you talk about because everybody's always interested in the culture at Amazon. Amazon generally, AWS as a division inside of Amazon. This bias for action, I think, is a really interesting term. Tell me about that a bit. There's an intention to act on an idea and use the data that comes from that action to drive decision making rather than over ponder something.
Yeah, I mean, there are many principles in some way. In some way, they're contradictional. Like one of the principles is insist on the high standards. Other one, do more with less. And the other is bias for action. And how can I insist on the highest standards and act fast? I mean, like it's intentionally put in this way. So you need to act depending on the situation. You balance between them, and then you drive. But this is the principles. But there are also other things like two-way door decision. That's how we call it. So whenever there is a decision, we need to understand, is it a two-way door decision or no? So like, can we move forward and then return back? If yes, let's do it. Let's try it. The faster we move, the better it is. So this is one of the principles. Anyway, Sergey, you have something?
Yeah, so basically entrepreneurship is encouraged in AWS, I'll say. So you are encouraged to build things, to experiment on things, because when experimenting on things, you obviously learn from these things. And that's the core of the whole day one culture that we have here at AWS. So basically, trying the whole iGaming industry was initiative of some of the folks inside of AWS, and well, it was quite successful, I would say. But we'll talk about that. Yeah.
So I found that interesting. So you were already inside of AWS when you identified a niche or a market category with the iGaming industry and said, "There's more that we could do here. We could better service this sector. There's value in it for AWS. There's a need on the industry side, on the customer side." And there's a specific knowledge to be gained by making a specialist team. Was this a difficult initiative internally to pitch and to promote? Or, as you say, there's a culture of looking for these opportunities, and there's a support infrastructure to help them materialize?
I would say probably it wasn't difficult to move forward, but it was difficult to understand, okay, what should we do there? What is our plan? What is we are missing for? So we should like to do a lot of things, but it doesn't matter. I mean, if you're, let's say, call a startup, you should do those things because that's how you deliver the best value. Okay, why customers? We need to understand first why customers like Amazon. Why they are using Amazon? Because there are pioneers who used Amazon before even we tried to work with this as an industry. So we understood that. What are other challenges we are not addressing? So we had to learn a lot. And then in some way, we should also to understand, okay, what the whole market, and then what we are missing in terms of the team, what trainings we need to deliver, what partners are we missing. So all these activities and all everything. And then as soon as we understood, we just start moving, executing one by one. It's called with stretch goal assignments sometimes. So when we have this amount of work and then, okay, let's do a little bit more and then a little bit more. And that's how it, succeed in the result.
Yeah, the interesting part is that AWS is a large organization, as you mentioned, and we already had lots of people who had a background in the industry or have been working in the industry or have been co-founders even, but they were spread around the worldwide. So one of the tasks that we had to accomplish altogether is to consolidate all these people and their experience, most of it, so that we can aggregate it, that we can structure it, and we can use it to learn more folks to the industry knowledge. So that was one of the challenging but quite rewarding tasks that we had to accomplish.
I want to get to where AWS is today, who you service today, what value you add, but I want to go, before we get there, I want to take a step back a bit because I've been in the industry for over 20 years. I've been on, as you know, there's various different actors in this business. There's the B2C providers, there's the B2B platforms like ours, there's B2C operators, there's the regulatory layer. In about 2010, I was heading up a games development platform, like a app store and games developer program. We were entirely cloud hosted. And I would go out to market talking to potential games developers to join our program, or operators to license games content from us, or regulators in markets where we were subject to having our platform be licensed. And I got so good at drawing clouds because in every one of those meetings, when I said, by the way, we're hosted in the cloud, that stopped the rest of the conversation because I had to explain how we had mitigated the risks that they perceived there to be with hosting in the cloud versus a terrestrial land-based, an on-prem data center, right? And it was a big curve at that point in the early 2000s, and to get this industry that initially started with in-house, operator-owned bare metal data centers in the location of the license, to get the regulatory actors to be stakeholders, let's say, to bless a cloud-based hosting strategy, to get the operators to understand that they would still have the control and the security that they were looking for, to get the supplier or the customer to understand that the service wasn't going to be compromised. In fact, it could be enhanced, and that there was all sorts of efficiencies. Where were you guys at that point in the journey? I mean, it's almost unimaginable looking backwards that this was ever a question, with how sensible and logical and how much of a default it is toward cloud hosting today. But was there a curve inside of AWS to move the industry in this way, and the various stakeholders involved? Was there initial buy-in by the industry, but some pushback that you had to help them resolve in terms of assurances that this was not going to jeopardize security or regulatory compliance?
I think I will start and then you cover the regulatory part. So regarding the pushback, I mean, that's interesting that you said it was a long time ago. We still see this. I mean, the customers are still saying, like, trying to, like, afraid of the cloud, that we will, I mean, block them somehow or whatever, because we don't like gambling or iGaming, whatever. I mean, the name is more preferable. But the reason is that there is no specific regulation in terms of Amazon for iGaming business. So we treat this the same way as any other business. So there's the policy. You just need to follow the policy. There is no specific differentiation in terms of iGaming. And many companies are just afraid, okay, we will move more clothes and we will block them. Still this fear exists. And regarding regulations, I believe that, Sergey, this is your favorite part.
Here's the guy whose favorite thing is regulation. We found him.
He do this talk with some regulators, so yeah.
Yeah, let's put it this way. So in order to explain the industry that we know what we're talking about in terms of everything, like regulations, like security, whatever. So we had to be able to show that, we have an expertise. How do we do that? We basically can do that through the series of engagements, like, for example, going to ICE and SBC, talking to customers. Or we can publish some materials, like, for example, some specific guidances or blog articles that say, okay, so we know how these things can be done. So there, one of the first blog articles we actually published is published by the US team, and it's called "How to Host Regulated Gaming Workloads on AWS," basically. And that's basically explains how the whole thing works. So we started talking to customers, we started producing materials. So now we have a lot of guidances that explain how to host the workloads. So we had a lot of conversations, we have a public presence, and we also have a lot of tools that allow to easily run the reporting, for example, to regulations that you can stop it within your premise. So it took quite a lot of time. So we had to explain the industry that yes, there are tools. So these tools are actually security approved. They then went through the layers and layers of validations, and we actually know how it applies to the industry itself. So we can explain how your business can actually use our tools to complete your tasking regarding whatever security questions you might have.
You know, we at Pragmatic have a good direct relationship with you guys. And one thing was, we were preparing for this discussion that we talked about was how many of your customers in iGaming aren't even necessarily aware, or certainly aren't taking advantage of there being an iGaming dedicated team within AWS. And I thought that was really interesting. I could see how that might come about, but is there there's sort of an outreach that you need to do to the industry as well? It must be part of the remit to build up this sort of specialization, is the education about why the technology is compatible, but also the awareness that don't take infrastructure for granted, that it just exists and it's just a utility service. You actually have a consultation role with the industry to optimize and to maximize the utility that you bring to the table. Is that normal in the service of cloud infrastructure, or is that specific to the iGaming industry? Or have you found a way to deliver that value and communicate that message? Or is there more that you can consult with in this industry that differs in any way from?
So it's more of the latter, actually. So that's one of the core elements of what we're building in AWS, is that we are trying for everyone else to not perceive us only as a technology platform, just not like a plumber who is just who I pay the bills for. So basically, we also have a very deep understanding of the business processes for the companies, and we can advise companies on the business matters. For example, expansion to new regions, for example, internal processes, maybe even hiring at some point, because we have a very advanced culture within AWS, and we can advise in this culture as well. So we established, for example, education centers with our customers. We established processes. We established mechanisms how to expand to different countries. So there are many, many, many more things which are way apart from the technology itself, and more like a business focused as well. And that's what we're trying to build here. So it's not like not only some virtual machines or whatever. So this also as a understanding of the business itself. And since we are looking at the whole picture holistically, so that's the value that we bring.
Does a success story come to mind there in terms of a client example where you've been able to deliver more than they might have thought about AWS for in the first instance?
Yeah, I would say this in some way, in terms of the Amazon, this is in some way it's a culture, because like why I'm saying it's a culture, because when you go to internal systems, you can see so many programs that we don't take money for, but they are supporting customers in terms of how to change perception of the executive teams of what is the art of possible, how we can train them. Okay, these are the things, so we are changing. So in some way it's advisory, consultation. We have a strategist team who is supporting free of charge and they're sharing the knowledge with other executives. So we hired those executives from huge companies. Now they work with Amazon and they're sharing their experience, how they worked, how the experience worked. And again, this is a free of charge. So that's why I'm saying this is a part of Amazon in terms of globally. And the examples, that's probably this was one of my first customers. That time it was very much from Ukraine, and we launched Academy together. So there was a struggle, a certain perception that iGaming is like, it's a stigma. There's a negative stigma. I don't want to work in iGaming because this is a bad industry. And I mean, to change this perception, because basically they're legal, they're super technological company and they're doing amazing products. And to change this perception, they created this academy. They launched events. So we invited to their event speakers. So I brought people from China to speak how to enter China market. I invited my other customers to speak on their event. Again, everything free of charge because I understood the value. Then another thing, that's what Sergey did together with pretty much, it was Academy. So the problem to hire people, but they decided, okay, let's not hire top talents, not only top talents, but also let's train new talents. They created Academy and we were part of this Academy. So we delivered one of the slots that was related to cloud, again, free of charge, because we were willing to support them to hire new people, because we understand, okay, this will bring more value and eventually this will like a win-win situation. So this is one of the examples, and again, many more. When we have the customers looking, hey, I'm struggling to find another good example. The customer say, hey, we're looking for a good sportsbook solution. I have so many choices, and I can say, hey, look at these customers, and we are.
And you might come at that question from a completely different angle than someone from a sportsbook product angle might come. You might say, this platform that we see operators using has very low latency, high transaction capability, high uptime. Also, you may be coming at it from a full performance perspective.
Yeah, and we see the inside. It's also very insightful. And I mean, working with so many companies, okay, and now I can say, okay, there is maybe some pattern that, okay, these companies are doing the best because they are doing this way. So we are also seeing from this technical side how they are moving and what makes them successful. Probably the key thing here is the speed, honestly, the responsiveness. The more close the company is, like, the more problems they have usually. If they're close, they're like trying to hide something, or they're like not speaking to, again, let's not take us, but I mean, they're super close, hard to get. And when those people from those companies leaving the company, and I talk to them, they're saying, no, I don't want to get back there because the process is, everything is so complicated. So yeah, the openness, the speed is probably one of the key differentiation that we see from great companies. And yeah, you're absolutely right. The technical side we see a lot.
Well, at Pragmatic Solutions, it's you guys are a key strategic partner for us, and together we service our customers, our mutual customers in this regard. And I found that over the last few years of working with you guys, there was, it's that journey that you talk about where we turned and looked inward at AWS instead of looking outwards together at the customer that we were mutually serving. We turned around and said to you, let's look together at what we're doing in terms of our footprint in your technology infrastructure. Is it optimized? Is it performant? What can we do, and how can we better serve the demands of our customers? Now, in today's iGaming world, there's always been the demand for performance, and the customers have very low tolerance for latency, and the tactile feel of their interaction with a gaming product needs to feel instant, even if what the operator is doing in the back end is very complex, the number of checks and everything that are happening simultaneously. So performance has always been important, but increasingly, regulation is a key factor that governs the need for operators to segregate their operations in different jurisdictions. They may be multi-jurisdictional, where they were previously operating in Europe only, and now they also have a license in Ontario, let's say, or they've expanded into the Brazil market, where regulation was introduced earlier in the year. That may change their hosting requirements, or you may have ways that you can optimize how they host their business within the AWS regional data center structure. How do you get involved in that sort of high-level view with the customer as to how to look at their whole business with them and how to suggest services? And who do you look to engage with inside of the operator or the platform provider like Pragmatic?
That's a good one. I mean, so how do we engage with the specifically with the operator or provider, like to support, to understand their workloads?
Yeah. And understand that there's other factors beyond just the optimal, just approaching it from a technology perspective may logically propose one solution, but there may be other factors that need to be considered, such as the jurisdictions in which they operate, regulatory demands of those jurisdictions, and also customer experience side of it.
Yeah, I mean, here I would say it helps a lot the knowledge that we understand the whole chain of how the value is created, what companies are working, what our companies are creating this value for the end player. So this is the first thing. And then we basically map what they're having inside there, and then say, hey, what about this? We're trying to pick what's working, what's not. And then if we see something goes wrong, we also try to level up. Okay, understand, do you have the team? Do you want the team? Like, do you want a partner? Do you want to train your own? How do you want to deliver it? And then after diving very deep, this is something that I believe is also one of the differentiator of us, is that we are diving very deep in terms of how to supporting the customer, understanding how they can do the business, and involving the right partners. Because if you understand, hey, you need a good sportsbook, we bring these people, for example. If they need a good performance monitoring system, we bring. If they need good advisor in terms of they want to create their own payment solution, we bring those people. So this ecosystem of great partners helps to understand. For first, dive deep in terms of what's happening there. Second, then we bring the right people, and it's super okay for us to bring people if it's not, let's call it, revenue generated for Amazon. So I've helped so many connections with that, but that's how we deliver.
I've always sensed a very confident position from Amazon, where it's not about you know what you bring to the table, and you know that you do it well. So you take from that position of confidence, a sort of generosity that you bring to the table with regard to suggesting other vendors that you may not have any direct benefit from, but they fit well within the problems that you're trying to solve for customers.
With that said, we always work backwards from the customer. So we don't just bring over lots of ideas and just dump them on the table. Okay, pick one. So that's usually like this. Yeah. So we usually talk with customers. We identify their priorities. For example, some of the platform operators want to expand to new markets. Okay, wonderful. So let's talk about that. How can we benefit your platform? How can we help your platform to expand or modify so that some components maybe might get to other markets much quicker? or maybe your priority is, I don't know, fighting fraud or whatever. So we first start with a set of questions and asks from the customer, and then we actually, since we're having lots of expertise, we know whom to involve and whom to talk to actually move the thing further. So, and we have a lots of resources to almost like virtually every workload right now.
So in today's market, with this experience and visibility that you have, what would you, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but let's see where this goes. How would you rate the priorities for the market that you serve today? What are the key issues that companies that you service through AWS are looking to resolve as priorities? I mean, there'd be the basics, but then there may be things like security that you mentioned. There may be monitoring and anticipating demand and elasticity to their infrastructure for cost efficiencies. I'm not going to fill out the whole list for you.
That's what I was
Tell me what you
hoping
think.
for. But yeah, I mean, some of them you mentioned. From our experience, I would say the first thing is to understand the downtimes. This is the first thing that you can start from. So, because I've seen many companies, they're saying, hey, cloud is 3, 4, 5, many times cheap, more expensive than what we have the server under our table or something. I said, okay, do you know the downtimes? What about downtimes? How often it goes down? How much it impact? And usually they're like, they're not answering because they don't have answers. But one of my great customers, they said, Sergey, we had a downtime, and the downtime it was for 8 hours, and it costs 8 hours to our business, like 1 year of using Amazon. We are moving right away.
Exactly, right?
So this is the first thing. I mean, you just need to understand to how much you lose from going to the cloud, or from not going to the cloud. This is one thing. Second thing is also a question in terms of how you compare. So if you compare one server to server, it's a good approach. But let's be honest, if you're running a you're a game provider, you're a player account management system, any type of business, and it's sometimes extremely hard to predict how many users you will have.
Right.
Like during the sports event, like major sport event finals, it can be 100 times more. And okay, what does it mean in terms of infrastructure? That means that you need to buy infrastructure to cover this gap, or you will lose customers or all players. And okay, what you will do if you buy this infrastructure, how you will capitalize this later. So you buy it. Okay, what's next? So with cloud, you can go up and down very easily whenever you need. And sadly, in some way, that you can also use the cloud to cover your technical issues. When, for example, the team is like understanding that there's some issue in the code. I had, like in my previous experience, similar case when we deployed integration on one of the CRM systems, and the integration was so heavy and the customer was suffering. So I said, hey, can we just increase the disks and it will work? And they said, yeah, we can do it. And it was like ching, and 1 minute, and then up, and everything is working. So yes, we basically covered with infrastructure the need, but we saved this customer, and this, as far as I know, is one of the most referenceable customer for one of my previous companies. So this is how it works. So you have this flexibility. So stability, one thing, flexibility, second thing. Third thing is how fast you can go to new markets. So, for example, Brazil is legalized. How fast can you enter this market? A great example, I think, is...
And is your local infrastructure relevant there?
Yeah. I mean, and this is like an issue. So if you are located in Europe, how you go to US, and how you go... And I think the FanDuel is a great example here. With Amazon, they reduced the scaling to one of your markets from 60 some single days to 20 by 3 times. Again, because we provide these guidances, they have all the automations, and like you have the single console, you just deploy it and done, you're working. It's very easy in terms of entering new markets. And also latency, I would say, this is another thing. The players expect that the platform, as you mentioned, works extremely fast. They don't accept these delays. Because, I mean, sometimes it's a winning bet. Sometimes they feel, oh, I'm not lucky and I will go somewhere else because this platform is not working good. So that's why we have this strategically worldwide located infrastructure. So in many, many markets, I don't know how many, but I mean, it's always expanding. And yeah, we're trying to be as close as possible to your players. This is a latency thing. And of course, the security. I mean, if, for example, another company will be, let's call it, hacked, I mean, usually in a gaming company will be hacked. Usually you just lose the progress of a player, some kind of, not personal stuff. If you have a breach in terms of iGaming business, you most probably can lose real money, the information about credit cards, everything else. So that's, I mean, more secure and more vulnerable area, I would say. That's why you need to be secured. So security is another thing. And here also comes the DDoS protection. This is a very interesting. This is probably the most top common issue that happens in the industry. But I would say this is a majority of companies has closed this topic, so it's working very good right now. But still, some of them are facing these DDoS issues. I don't know. Maybe I missed something.
I don't move off those two topics too quickly because, as you say, security and DDoS, we hear about it all the time in terms of us providing assurances that our technology is going to be robust in terms of its ability to secure the data, and that we are proactive in our monitoring and are reactive when it comes to a customer who's subject to a DDoS attack. But we rely on AWS for a lot of that defense layer as well. You must hear about it from everybody in the industry. So I'm not surprised that shows up on your list of priorities. I'm surprised it's tough to decide what the order of those should be in, because for each customer, latency might have been something that they put away as a concern a long time ago, and their number one priority now, as they've grown in scale, is that they become more interesting for those that want to damage their business to target them, and their priorities are going to be about security and data protection. So has this become a specific area of competency within the AWS iGaming team?
Security. Well, it was the last in the list of Sergey, but it is a first priority for us always. Security is always the easier thing.
Take it for granted, not to say take it for granted, but of course it is. So I understand why that may be
more business person.
3 and 4 on your list, but I say that'd be a tough list to order. But anyway, let's unpack it a bit more.
Yeah, so in terms of security, basically I think a lot of people know about that already. So we support the shared responsibility model. So we provide a lots of tools, and basically a lot of our components, they are already validated by the security standards like SOC, like ISO, like PCI DSS, etc., etc. So a lots of different providers open, and a lot of these elements are already validated, and it makes much easier for companies to build on top of using these elements, basically because those are already validated.
Yeah,
and you can just bring them to a regulator and say, okay, this service is already PCI DSS validated. And another thing is that in terms of tooling, to every company, virtually every company, it may be a small startup, it may be like a future enterprise, it can be anything. So we provide enterprise-grade tools to set up the security perimeter, to set up the reporting, to set up easy uploading data, to reporting data to regulators. So basically, there are lots of very, very complex and advanced tools that cover all aspects of security, like identifying like personal data within your like stored files or whatever, or maybe, I don't know, identifying the fraudulent patterns in the actions within the system. So there are very, very advanced tools as well, and all of those are all available to virtually everyone, regardless of type of the company or size of it or whatever.
And I guess part of your service is advising on what they should be taking advantage of in terms of that tooling.
Obviously, we don't just throw a bunch of tools at you. There are lots of tools in AWS. Yeah, we are pretty much aware of that. But one of the key aspects of working with AWS is talking to us, because we know how these things work, and you know how your business works, and together we can build something like very, very robust and functional.
I was thinking about it last night as I was thinking about us meeting today to have this conversation, but in a way, AWS is in that category of things that have become sort of foundation layers that new startups or innovators can build upon, and they don't have to solve those problems again. You're solving those problems, and you're doing so at scale. So if I want to start a new games company, or I want to start a new platform operation, whatever, I'm building upon a mature technology that provides the security layer, provides the advice and infrastructure to support a low latency, globally distributed service. And I don't know that it's appreciated enough how that creates a higher starting point. It's like someone's starting today in introducing new innovation in this industry, basically in any industry, but let's say we're talking about iGaming. In iGaming is starting from the 5th rung on the ladder, where they used to have to climb those 5 rungs individually as a company. So you must see all sorts of interesting companies that come to AWS at the early stage in their life cycle as a business, but have a really interesting idea, but where the capital cost of building what you offer them as a pay-as-you-go service would have meant that their product never even would have gotten to market previously. You wouldn't have raised enough capital if you had to build all the infrastructure that you could leverage from AWS. So in that way, you play a role in driving innovation in the industry. Am I right in that assessment?
That's a very good point, because we are working, we're talking about the regulated gaming industry right now, but AWS works virtually with any industry there is. So there is banking, which has quite a lot of common, use cases with gaming, iGaming industry. So there is also gaming, there is also sports and entertainment, there is sports, there's media entertainment. There are lots of industries which have overlapping experience with the regulated gaming industry. And when you come to AWS, you capitalize not only on our team experience, which is like, with just a limited amount of people, but you capitalize on the experience of the whole AWS. And some people have been working with FSI, and they built like a system for the reporting, and they put a blog post about it, or solution, or whatever. Some people have been playing with working with sports, and they know how the sport feed works. And they also put their experience there, and we aggregate a lot of experience. We put our experience there. So we publish a lot of materials across all the AWS, and you get all this experience, not only technological platform. So you capitalize on the whole AWS there is.
Yeah, and I think that's a big accelerator.
And just to echo what you said in terms of starting point, I think there are like several great examples what I really like. The company, you may know, Spripe.
Yes, Aviator.
Yes, it's one of my one of the favorite game providers. Again, one of many, but still, when they started with Amazon. That was early days in their journey, so they migrated to AWS, and they immediately improved the performance by 4x times. So again, just by migrating, they have amazing technical team. And they migrated to Amazon, and they managed to increase by 4x times. So imagine you had like one amount of GGR, and then you're like 4x more. They showed the graphics and was like, oh gosh, that's just after migrating. And
And what problem was it that migrating solved?
Oh, that's again, it's
just scale.
I mean, it's hard to say what was that time. I mean, what exactly reason for them? Because I remember we approached them in Kiev and saying, "Hey guys, do you want to try?" And say, "Yeah, we are thinking about some option." And say, "Hey guys, we will support you, provide." And they were like quite inspired. And then we started this journey. And now, so that time they were just starting. It was long time ago. And now they are #1 cruise game in the world, as far as I know. So that's amazing how you can scale on top of what you said. There's a good structure.
Well, you're solving problems, or have already solved problems they didn't need to have in their problem domain to solve, right? And that's, I think, the same is true for many companies. And for us as a platform provider, we get a lot of value in providing a better service for what we bring to the table by capitalizing on what AWS provides in terms of infrastructure and scale. So we see a lot today about operators trying to drive personalization for customers. They want to give customers different tailored experiences. Somebody told me an interesting story about customer retention, and I've told this story before, so I got to be careful that I don't repeat myself too many times in these circumstances. But it stuck with me because what they were saying was, the marketing teams had been prioritizing discussions about, second month retention, when really the likelihood of a customer having a second month was governed in their first session. And it was in that session, recognizing that customer might not have had a good experience, and you missed the opportunity to offer them a bonus in that session. And they didn't have a second day. By the time you notice they didn't have a second month, they didn't have a second player session. They didn't have a second week. So a month is far too late. the point of that story, and I've told it before, is it's about real time. In interrogating transactional activity and looking for insights that come from real time live transactional activity, studying that through machine learning or an algorithm applied to the data, deriving an inference from that, and using that to create an event that feeds back into a platform like ours and then modifies the player experience in real time. Now, increasingly, operators are I'm finding it interesting to see how many companies are emerging in that data processing space. And it's tough to know which horse to back in that race because it's so emergent, right? But operators are concerned that they need to give data out to third parties for that data processing. And we see that there's a lot that can be done within the environment to keep the data residing within the operator's control while still leveraging a data processing provider. Can we talk about that a little bit in terms of how AWS sees that evolving? Because I think you have an important role to play in providing infrastructure that allows the operator to take comfort in leveraging all the advantages of Amazon, already getting comfort that they haven't compromised their security in that respect, but now allowing other vendors that are maybe also hosted within Amazon to provide a processing service to some of their real-time data. But in doing so, Amazon provides a sort of ecosystem that ensures the integrity is not compromised in any way.
I think I would answer this in two parts. I would answer this first thing is regarding the personalization and then how we get this personalization in terms of the data and everything.
Okay.
So in terms of personalization, I think this is the key thing that it's like a mission in terms of Amazon. So we empower iGaming companies to deliver this exceptional player experience. So that's the core that brings the interesting part to the player. They want to have this entertainment. They want to have this. And when the operators are focusing fully on this part, that's what creates amazing brands. I mean, this is a standard marketing thing that first you have the product and take it or leave it. And then as the product, more products evolve, then you have this differentiation and you need to provide more, better and better service. So that's the thing where we advise to focus more to all of the customers. And then go in terms of this personalization, there are like two ways how you can approach this. The one thing is, we can call it, some we call it buyers. So I need it right here, right now. You want to test some feature. There are AWS services and partner solutions that you can plug in. You feed the data, you get the result, and boom, you have this personalization recommendation. Same as an Amazon retail store. You open the Amazon store and then you search the products and there is like recommended items for you. Or you open the Prime Video and then you have recommendation videos for you. This is the same engine.
There goes my Saturday.
Thanks
very much.
So yeah, I need to be careful. But in terms, honestly, the customers expect this magic. I'm really frustrated when I open something and they don't know what I want, and this is frustrating. So this is the part where you take this and you test it. You can test the idea. Okay, that works. Let's go, move forward, and so on. But this is an engine. You can feed any data, and then everything is secure within your account, and you get results. Another way is, you are like, we want to build it. We want to do something on our own. And this is very good. It's like an established brand. You have an ML team or an expert analytics team or a good partner who will support you in this way. And then you can create your own models within Amazon and build your own models, test it, launch it, and so on. And yes, you're absolutely right that the customers are looking to predict early churn, VIPs. They're looking for which next best action they can provide. There's so many things happening now and that you can process in real time. And from the security part, again, I will leave this very interesting topic to Sergey. How can we provide the security, Sergey?
Well, as long as you own the data within AWS, it's completely on within your premise. Basically, you control the data, you control the access, you control the patterns of access, like monitoring, whatever. So whatever's within AWS, that's basically that's yours, your part in the scope of the responsibility model, obviously. So there are some things that we cover as well. But in terms of experience, how to build the whole thing, how to make it more performant, yes, secure, how to make it integrate with all the required systems, we have quite a lot of guidances already. We have a very interesting case with the Poker Stars. I think you had a conversation with them
Yes.
some time ago. And yeah, that's exactly the case when we can involve people who've been working exactly on this case, who know how it works. Basically, this system that can process like tens of thousands of messages per second and make recommendations on top of that. So that's exactly the experience that we are offering. So that's exactly when we can talk to you and say, okay, so we implemented this thing, we done this, this, and this. So it is so much secure, this is so much performance. So if you want to implement it, yes, we will need some resources from you, but we offer the education, we offer the diagrams, we offer everything there is so that you could build it yourself. Will it take more time than an integrated solution? Yes. Will you have more control? Obviously.
One thing that I would also add here is that it's also important to have a partner like you here in this process, because again, we take this technical complexity on ourselves and handle it and support. But the idea with personalization and any other type of new AI things that's happening is hypothesis. Like me and Sergey, we can try to guess things, but the best experience is for those who are in this industry, who know the player, who are the players, so you can say, hey, let's check if this works. Let's check this idea. And they are thinking about ideas. And then based on the resources and everything that we provide, you can generate new things that will, oh gosh, that's what they were looking for. Because this together we're solving this context puzzle in some way that, yes, we bring this business expertise and we take this technical side, and together we're supporting the iGaming operators.
I think we jointly have a role to play in reducing the threshold for innovation and pilot projects. You know, like you say, a lot of our most successful customers don't bat 1,000, to use a baseball term. You know, they try things and they put more effort and energy and capital behind the ideas that are showing early signs of success. And they might double down on one that, you know, was a good thesis to begin with, but it's not immediate success. But then if it's not proven, they'll back away from it and focus the energy elsewhere. And as a platform provider, we try to lower the barrier to try things, to integrate a product that you think might have an impact on your marketing retention rate or conversion rate or lifetime value of a customer, or to integrate and activate a new game content provider. Now, if the content turns out that there's material difference and impact on your customer enjoyment and as a result on GGR, fantastic. But if not, it wasn't too heavy a lift to activate that product. And I'm hearing that we both have a role to play there. And then the more that AWS brings to the table as market-ready, proven technologies and infrastructure services, the lower the bar to contemplate trying something innovative. And that's something that I think I personally didn't appreciate as what you now bring to the table, and how important that can be to taking the industry forward, which I think is a perfect segue into, now I'm going to ask you to use your crystal ball and let's look forward. And you guys have a very interesting perspective because you talk to everybody. I mean, this industry is a very big user of AWS services. So you talk to platforms like us, game suppliers, operators, service providers like, and in the responsible gaming, there's all sorts of technologies that are consuming data to inform operators to identify problematic gambling behavior and things like this, to help operators pass KYC processes of onboarding customers, the ID verification services. I'm sure you see all these companies inside of AWS. So you've got a very interesting lens to do a future prediction about what the trends are and where the industry is going. I'd be interested to hear what your perspective tells you. What kind of priorities are you supporting as you look ahead?
I would say probably one, and then I will let you probably share some things here. But the one thing that from my side, I see that more and more iGaming companies are joining Amazon, and the result, we have this ecosystem in some way. So when there's a game provider, aggregator, player account management system, a platform provider, or operator. So payment system, they're all together. They're sitting in the same maybe data center and the same, we call them availability zone or region.
Yep.
And they're benefiting from the speed, one thing. So where they are benefiting from the speed. And when we are like, hey, are you using this? We are connected to this provider. We want to go to Amazon too. So this is like this chain of effect. And the more customers, the more bring ideas to what we do, can innovate
Right.
more. And
Right.
the better they also get the services because it cheapens the price. They can establish direct connection between them. This will not leave Amazon infrastructure at all. It will go within backbone. And that's one thing that I would say. But yeah, I think the Sergey has more innovative things.
And before we move on to Sergey on that point, I guess that one, it compounds. That's sort of a multiplier effect to that because the next one that joins adds more and more to that ecosystem.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
interconnected services don't even need to communicate outside of an AWS zone to talk to each other. And there's got to be efficiencies that come with that.
Absolutely. And one small example, I think that's in fintech that we've seen a lot, and we hope this will move forward in iGaming. When we have these huge financial companies, and they're like smaller companies, they always say, hey, we want to deploy as close as possible to them because we need milliseconds acceleration. And there's a like a specific term in Amazon that can help you to create this virtual, let's call it, we call them placement group. And you have this placement group, you just share, hey, this is our placement group. You don't share nothing, just an ID. And basically, when the customer deploys within their account, their infrastructure, Amazon identifies, okay, these are the same placement group. I will put them as close as possible together. And as a result, they are like saving tons of money in terms of this latency, in terms of the communication costs, everything. So this is this cumulative effect that you mentioned in some way. But yeah. So you have more, you just say probably crystal ball ideas.
Now you're going to trump him again with a better idea.
Well, not really, but yeah, there are lots of things that we see, and one of which, well, let's address elephant in the room. There is a lot of AI coming. A lot of AI which is being integrated, but the main trend is that the companies are trying to adopt this idea of being data centric. So basically, they want to adopt. They make all of their decisions data driven, just like we do. For that, they obviously need to set up mechanisms to democratize data access. They need to get rid of data silos. There's a lots of underlying things.
Yeah.
And that's when, because they need to give an access to all different parts of their company to the data so that they could understand what's happening within the company and make the proper adjustments, experiments, or whatever. And that's one of the biggest trends is to provide this interface to already aggregated data to all of the people who needs this data. And that's where AI comes in. And that's a big thing because a lot of people, they are like marketing. There may be some risk management. Okay, these guys are data driven already. So a lots of departments who already have questions, but they had no idea how to translate this question to the data that they have. And that's where AI comes in. So AI is this glue between all these kind of types of people and the data. It basically can translate like a natural question to the data and give the response pretty quickly in a summarized way. And that's one of the big things that we keep on seeing. That's more and more companies come with this request to us. It's like, how do we build this? How do we tap into our data using AI so that we want our users to understand what's happening, but we have no idea how these users can actually get there.
Yeah, I mean, first step was how do we get more data out of the systems? Like, how do we get more data out of all the services that make up the technology stack for an operator? And then how do we structure that data so it's interrogatable and reconcilable? And then now there's so much of it. How do I separate the signal from the noise? And how does one department harvest that data for their purpose? And another department has a very different use case for tapping into a data lake or another data service.
Exactly, because and it seems like a daunting task.
Yeah.
It's like everybody, okay, we have these data warehouses and well, we need to set up some complex systems so that the queries are translated. There is a permission systems, there is a ABC, whatever. and it actually is not anymore. So we provide expertise, and we're constantly working on improving our tools to make this glue be as seamless as possible. So integrating such systems already takes our customers days only. So a lot of customers already have data warehouses or data lakes or whatever, and build this pipeline to whatever interface they're using, Slack maybe, like Teams, whatever. Again, I'm repeating myself. It takes days already. And if you talk to us, it will take even less.
To echo what Sergey said, it takes fast, because Sergey showed me this interface. He showed me this chat, basically chat, and he said, I said, how much revenue did we get last month? And the system analyzes it and gets the information within the simple way, like, hey, this is how you brought, and everything in a very structured, it can be called like executive summary way. And then you can ask how to grow revenue. That's my favorite part, how to grow revenue, and then done. Let's see what it does. And the system analyzes information on, okay, how the revenue, what delivered the revenue the most, what gains, how much communicated with the customer. So any parameters that you feed into this, the system can analyze, okay, what's the dependency, and suggest you improvements. I've seen this case with one of the financial technology companies. They ask how many like insurance did we sold and how to improve it. And it was such a great drill down with reports, with everything. And specific recommendation that they need to invest into seasonal advertising, because there is a specific it was a drop in some months, and what exactly working with which companies they should invest in, and everything else. And it's this term I think I recently heard, talk to your data. That's how.
Okay, I like
and
that.
It's very easy. You just talk to your data, and then, because sometimes the person can have great ideas, but with those so many tools, it's quite hard to, okay, how can I get this data? Oh gosh, I need to go to that report. And it's such a hard disaster. But when you have a simple source, you're a customer support manager or VIP manager, you just have this summary. Okay, how much cases, support cases do we have with this player open? What are the language he wants to speak, what's things, favorite he thinks. The short summary, very short, that was aggregated across all the communications. It helps a lot in terms of the communication. And it's finally human readable way. So it's not like you're asking some questions and you have only 3 options to reply. That was long time ago. But yeah, this is something that is really happening when you have this data and proper tools. And of course, genius people who can support, because again, we can provide you tools, we can provide some ideas, but it's very hard to understand, okay, what's the thing that you want to experiment on? Because this is unique thing that you know, that's unique value that you bring to your customers. Yeah, this is the one thing. But I think there's another one that's related, how fast, because this I like also. That's for me as a more business person, I like this a lot, because when I say, Sergey, how much time do you need to do this? I can always come to him with some ideas, and he said, I need this tomorrow. He said, let me think. And then he comes after lunch and says, hey, Sergey, look what I've done. And he shows me the result. How did he do it? And I think this is the other part. But yeah, Sergey, I believe.
Well, I mean, in this discussion today, and I knew this, but I'm glad we have an opportunity like this to talk and share it, because these geniuses you refer to, you guys are definitely in that category. I don't know that you're referring to yourself, but I mean, there is expertise like this to tap into. And we've talked with Amazon as a platform provider increasingly for a long time now. We've had a good dialogue between our companies, and we work closely together. Increasingly, we've been involving you in a discussion with our customers. We've been opening that layer up a bit and say, well, why don't the 3 of us get on a call and add the layer of, rather than you and I just discussing, or our teams just discussing infrastructure and what we see, let's also include the customer in that discussion, so we can understand what's important to their business, what's their ambitions for the business, their business objectives, their roadmap, and then work together to optimize cost or optimize performance, or give them greater assurances around security, and give them the information they need to assure the regulators that they're applying for licenses in the jurisdiction, have a sound approach to the way that they're going to host and offer their services. So I think we've gotten to this stage in our business relationship together But what advice would you have for operators that aren't having a conversation with AWS today? What should they do to reach out to you, and where do you suggest that conversation begins?
There are a few ways. One of the simplest one is just type in regulated gaming AWS.
Yeah,
That's the most quick and instant way.
you got a good SEO team. You rank number one.
Yeah,
Search.
that's the fastest way. And since we attend the most of the major events worldwide, like ICE, SBC, Sigma,
Okay.
just come over. So we already increase our presence. We are starting to publish actually on in Lisbon, was it SBC, I think. We will have a booth with a demo actually, so
Fantastic.
you can come over
And you'll both be there.
yeah.
Good.
So yeah, just come over, talk to us, reach out to us. It really isn't the problem. Yeah, Skype chats.
But yeah, regarding the recommendation, yes, I would say talk to us and to talk to account managers. This is the thing that happens a lot with many customers. We just don't know that you unfortunately exist. So as a company, we know, but as a team, I just I see some company, like it happened a lot that they were like, this social network is now working amazingly. Like, hey Sergey, can you support my friend? He has some questions. Says, yeah, of course, send me.
Right.
And then he shares the ID, and I look, oh, IT service company. And how should I understand
Right.
this?
So the account that they hold with AWS doesn't identify them as a
Yeah.
gaming operator, and they've not reached out to you, and you don't have a way to outreach to them.
Yeah.
So one of the key messages we can get across today is that you guys are there to take that call or to meet with them and advise, and that you've got a lot to offer beyond what maybe people think initially when they think of AWS. I think there's a lot more services and consultation that you guys can provide.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, another thing is that the cost optimization is a key topic for us as well. So I'm chasing my customers very intensively, and sometimes they say, no, Sergey, let's talk about customization next year or something like that. So I'm trying really to chase each of them, because, and this is not just me personally, because as a company we have this cost optimization index. It calculates how much is a customer optimized, and if it's not optimized, there's like a red light, and that, hey, you should do something. Because eventually, if you're not optimized, that means that you're using cloud not properly, and you are not happy as a customer. And we are trying to be this long run with you. So talk about anything that bothers you in terms of, let it be costs. Let's focus on costs. Let's drop those costs as much as possible. We find the ways. I had one customer with whom I just talked, and immediately after the meeting, like several days later, let's be honest, it was like minus 30 or 40% drop, because we understand, hey, you don't need this, you don't need this. Why are you using this? Because we know the specifics, we know what might work for them. Also, there's special programs that we also bring for the table. You can see on our website, based on some consumptions, you can have some special programs. Also possible. So your account manager is the key to these programs. And if you're not happy with it, it's always okay also to change, to ask for change. We are not saying, hey, you have this one and not. We have multiple people, great people. And if you want to have the same language person, maybe in some other region, we can also do this. We're extremely flexible in this way. So communicate, say what you want, and we will do the best we can to support you.
Well, Sergey, we talked about it earlier. AWS comes from a position of confidence and market leadership. And I think there's companies that would be happy for a customer to be overspending on a service that they're using. I think it's great that you look at that and you say, look, we're in this for the long run. If we can help you optimize costs, we know that helps build a stronger customer relationship. And that's really good to hear, because there's too few companies that would approach their customer relationship with the same value that you guys bring to the table. I'm really grateful for the conversation to speak with you and to tell viewers of Connected more about AWS. As I said, we're Pragmatic Solutions, and Pragmatic as a group, we're really grateful for a long-standing working relationship with you. Look forward to working with you guys even more. And I hope that as a result of this conversation, more of the operators and stakeholders out in the industry reach out to you guys directly and see you at one of the upcoming shows. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Sergey.
Thank you.